Thank you very much. So I'm going to start my talk with this kind of shift of theme a little bit here, but not so much from the previous two speakers, Christian and Chris. Let me introduce you to research at eBay. Many of you may or may not be aware about it. So I'm going to briefly talk about my team, and then I'm going to delve into kind of research problems. So my team is a diverse set of scientists, all the way from machine learning to natural language processing, looking at intent science, which is basically understanding user behavior, search and ranking, and the newer areas are computer vision and economics and infographics, NetSci and distributed computing. We have been working on distributed computing for a while. And as I describe the problem space, you will understand why these people exist in my team and what they might be doing, et cetera. But before I delve into that, I want to introduce you to eBay itself. And those of you who have heard me talk before probably have seen this slide before. So just hold your thought for a minute. And this was the first item that was sold on eBay. eBay, as you might have heard the story, was a website founded by Piero Midyar over a weekend, Labor Day weekend, trying to set up a site where he could sell stuff. And he used to have a cat. He used to play with the cat. I used to point the laser pointer at the wall, and the cat would jump over it. And one day it stopped working. And he tried to fix it, change the bulbs and change the batteries, et cetera. It didn't work at all. So he thought, maybe I'll list this one on the site and see what happens. And he listed it as an auction, and he actually listed and said, this is broken. I used to use it to play with my cat. I don't use it anymore. It doesn't work, but listed as an auction at 99 cents. And I don't know how many of you know, we've not seen this before, how much it sold for. It sold for about $14.83. Much more than actually a brand new laser pointer sells for. And he asked the buyer and said, do you know what you're buying? And it's broken, I said. He said, yes, well, of course I understand, because I'm a collector of broken laser pointers. So I always wonder, if I was a scientist on day one in the company, now what if he had sold a new one? What would the company have looked like, right? And it would have been very different. And since then, it has been a journey of things that as scientists or as rational people or logical people, we don't expect. We see stuff in the data that we never expect to see. And there are questions that people have raised in the past that have been actually countered by the behavior of the users and even the company. Here's an example. And as the site has evolved, quirky stories come up about eBay every once in a while. People selling their soul, people selling their husband, spouse, whatever, their family. And here's one. Probably people sitting at the back might see what it is. A woman listed a frozen cheese sandwich, grilled cheese sandwich, that was lying in a freezer. And she said, well, I took it out after 10 years, and I could see the image of Virgin Mary on the so the folks at the back probably understand what it looks like. And she said, anybody wants to buy it? And she started again the auction at 99 cents. And guess how much it sold for? Again, if you know about it, you won't be surprised. But it eventually sold for $28,000. So you might wonder, what an idiot, who paid $28,000 for either a very religious person or somebody with a lot of money. The story got covered in all kinds of business magazines, trade magazines, and it was actually bought by a holding company in Las Vegas. And they were asked, so why did you buy this for $28,000? So he said, this was our cheapest marketing spend, and we got covered in all the magazines. So the point there was, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And this has been the story of eBay all along, because it allowed pretty much the theme of the company, or the principles in which the company was founded was, anybody with a passion to buy or sell with an internet connection and something to buy or sell should be able to conduct commerce. So which means the bar was so low that anybody and everybody should be able to participate. And there have been stories about people who were on food stamps, making a living, people who lost their jobs during the dot-com bust, becoming millionaires on eBay. And it is said that about 1 million families in the United States alone make a living solely on eBay. And if you are a user on eBay, you would not be surprised. And that makes it interesting for a researcher, because I think yesterday there were speakers who were hinting that these computer scientists are boring people. They're impassionate. And guess what? I get to tell these stories as a computer scientist, right? So But having said that, it is a really, one of the biggest commerce sites, online commerce sites today. So I can give you some statistics because we are all number junkies, right? So on an average, on eBay, a vehicle sells every 2 minutes. A computer and accessory sells every 3 seconds. A diamond ring sells every 83 seconds. And a Timberland shoe sells every 10 minutes. A baseball card or trading card sells every 6 seconds. And this is kind of the volume of things we are thinking about and the frequency of stuff that's happening on the site all the time. And here are some very rough statistics on the site. About 10 plus millions, give or take, items get newly listed. About a third of them convert. Over 150 million. These numbers are probably off by a few tens of millions here or there because they were done a while ago. Are live at any point of time. 100 plus million users active on the site, and 4 out of 5 items are one of a kind. So you might be selling an iPad, I might be selling an iPad, but I have a story to tell. We let you tell the story. That makes it interesting, right? And and over 30,000 categories of items that are listed. And now you can imagine why people are selling the kind of stuff that they're selling. And everybody, you probably have your own personal stories on eBay because of what you bought, what you sold. I was at the IBM Centennial a few months ago, and I was introduced to John Cohn, who's an IBM fellow. And I said I was a former IBMer. And he said, what do you do today? And I said, I work for eBay. He said, oh, I have a great eBay story to tell you. And he's telling me that story. And I was trying to invite him for a talk to come and give it. He said, absolutely, I have the perfect talk to give because John, if you know him, he teaches middle school kids engineering. He encourages them to take science and engineering, and he constantly blows up things and creates all kinds of sparks and lightnings. And he's looking for parts all the time. He says, where else can I buy it and find it except for eBay? So it is this place where it matches people who have extremely different interests and come together and something that I don't want, you really, really want, and there's a price for it. Right? But at the same time, the data causes interesting challenges because of the nature of the scale of things here, because pretty much any pair of things that you look at, buyers or sellers, or items are buyers or items are sellers, and you see a skew there. So all of them have a good power law distribution. So buyers outnumber sellers by 5 to 1. Sellers, the items sold, so very few sellers sell a lot of things, very few sellers sell, make a lot of money on the site, and same applies to the buyers. And these, again, and the thing is that items are not cataloged. And Chris Anderson, when he wrote the long tail book, he came to eBay and gave a talk about long tail. And I said, how come you didn't cover eBay very well? And he said, well, because you don't have catalogs. I said, so we could not really study your data. And that's the point of long tail. And we had an interesting conversation after that. Because the data gives scientists interesting challenges and problems to solve. So, and the way I look at my team or the researchers in the company, it's really everybody is looking at data. It's the same data. It's the transaction data, the user data, the communication data. And if you look at the scientists I listed in the first slide, whether they're machine learning people or vision people or economics or human-computer interaction and graphics people, they're all looking at the same data and adding new dimensions to the way they look at the data, they ask questions, they answer questions. Then the first time I interviewed an economist to come to the team, and he says, why are you looking for an economist? For eBay, by the way, is the most researched site as far as empiricists are concerned, empirical economists are concerned. In fact, there's a famous bet at Stanford where one of the famous economists, I wouldn't name him, said, this company won't last because the auction format is not based on sound economic principles. And he bet $20, and his student came to interview, and he said, sadly enough, he still believes that. But that's science in one dimension, right? But the point is, there are interesting questions economists have had. I'll give you an example or two as we go on. You can ask off of the same data. It also provides us with an interesting environment for these people to interact and ask questions and exchange ideas between these teams. So, and this is not my slide. This is stolen from people who have talked about big data. So basically, the approach we have taken for most of the work is because there's a lot of data, we throw more and more data at the problems, and we try and solve the problems using simpler algorithms. So we focus less on algorithms and more on data. But at the same time, so any prior that you have had in terms of models, you throw away, and new models will emerge as you throw in new data into the system. And basically what you do is that you discard existing theories and develop new algorithms and new theories. So people have had theories about fraud, have about auction formats or auction science, And they've discarded them and come up with new stuff as data tells a new kind of story. And basically, we are looking at data. I mean, again, this applies to any company like eBay at a scale and at numbers that science has never seen before. That makes us really take science to the edge of data. I mean, okay. So the way that this is just a framework in which the research team works, and this gives you. I tell professors who recommend students to come for internships or students who come for internships. They come and say, oh, I worked on really large-scale problems, and then you kind of say, hey, how large was your problem? It is a few thousands of nodes. And you can believe that when they're sitting at a university with the computing environment they have. And what I've done, or what we have done, is kind of create a framework where every scientist who comes into the team gets to look at all the data. So you come on Monday, by Friday, you have to have access to all the data. And it is on a platform where you can plug in your algorithm, plug in your system. I'm pretty sure other research labs have similar structure. But on day one, you're looking at multi-million rows of data. One of the earliest economists in the team was telling me that when he wrote his dissertation, his data was 200 rows on a spreadsheet. And that's what he worked on for 3 years. And I said, so how is it different here? And he said, well, 450 million rows of data. I can't even imagine that. And the point about economists, unlike computer scientists, is that it's not that they're looking at 450 million rows of data. They extract 200 rows of data out of the 450 million rows of data in interesting ways. And they can actually do that. Makes it very, very interesting to them. So I'm going to give you just a couple of examples of what data means to us. And this is, again, not a surprising slide here. This is a graph of Mother's Day, and I can ask the question, how much people love their mothers? Well, at least once a year, around May, they start buying stuff for their mothers. And then around 2008, 2009, people didn't have enough money. So they spent less on their moms. Dads out there shouldn't feel disappointed because people spend on their dads as well. Around June, I think it's this week, or last week. I forget, last week. Okay. And the same kind of pictures happen. Then you can ask the question, how much do they love their moms as compared to their dads? And these questions were, you could ask the question, but data gives you the answer. And they love their moms a lot more than dads, except for 2009, I guess when the world went south. They had to hedge their bets, so they loved them close enough, right? So, what's that?
Extend more, not necessarily more.
Yes. So I'm going to give you another example because I keep talking about economists. And here's another interesting answer that economists have wondered about as far as eBay is concerned. So, experimentation in the internet market is something that has, stoked the curiosity of economists for a long, long time. And it's useful for them to learn, and answer questions about how markets work, how consumers respond to different policies and strategies and price changes that companies or firms make, right? And as I started working with this economics team, John Levin from Stanford, there was a question. So if you look at old economics paper in the last 10 or 12 years, even written on eBay, an economist has a question on a price change. What would they do? They would buy 100 Pokemon cards, sell 50 one way, sell 50 another way, and then they collect the data, and they massage it, and they answer a lot of questions around that data. And suddenly we realized when we have data at this scale that, well, our sellers are one of the best economists out there because they have an incentive to make money on the site. So as eBay makes policy changes, or as they see changes on the site, they are constantly experimenting. If you have 100 Pokemon cards to sell, what would you do? You would basically hedge your bet, and you'll sell a bunch of them one way and a bunch of them another way. Now, when all of this data is available, right, you've got millions of cases of experiments already naturally happening on the site. And now you can mine that, and you can answer your interesting economics questions off of this data. So pretty much any question that we had, think about market outcomes and consumer behavior, price variability, any kind of starting bid prices, bidding strategies, et cetera. We found hundreds of thousands of experiments already existing on the data in the site as we looked at these transactions. So our job was to actually provide a platform where economists can look at this data and extract out these experiments and then start answering these questions. So what we did was, there's a link to the paper at the bottom. we went through systematically at all of these economics papers that have been written and saw how quickly we could answer the questions that you have tried to answer in the past. How well do buyers internalize shipping fees and stuff like that? How are images, providing more information? Is it a good thing or a bad thing, et cetera? And if it is good, how good is it? And all of this has been summarized in the paper. So there's a link at the bottom. It's an NBR paper, which talks about naturally occurring experiments on this platform that answer interesting and useful economics questions. So when you have data at this scale and when you have a platform that allows you to access data at this scale, then suddenly your research takes a completely different shape and scale and speed that it's not seen before. Okay, and so as a scientist in an industrial organization, it's really a great opportunity for us to satisfy our scientific curiosity and progress science through the kind of things that we see on the side and in the data that we see. And at the same time impact business because you're working for the company and help the community. So one of the things that my great stories are, I can tell stories about our users, but I can also communicate with them constantly. As researchers, you get to go talk to the buyers and sellers because they're making a living on there. And they are fascinated or they're actually interested in the tools. You can show them the tools, they will use it, they will tell you whether it works or not, and how we can improve it. There's a great story of a buyer that I met, and she collects picture postcards on the site. And she said, I have about $400 to spend every month. And why is eBay recommending me more picture postcards? I already know picture postcards. I got $400 to spend on you. Recommend me something else. Now, we were talking about privacy yesterday. But she wants recommendations because she spends time on the site and she wants to buy more. Be more intelligent about your recommendations. And this is the kind of conversation you get to have with your users while you're pursuing your research and also benefiting the community. But at the same time, there are challenges. We want to go beyond this. There's an entire research community outside the company. How do you engage them? How do you scale this research beyond the walls of your own data and your own company? And how do you share best practices in answering questions or doing research? And while honoring privacy and other legal requirements that your company might impose on us. And these are questions that have constantly come up, have been asked, and every time I meet a researcher says, oh, you work for eBay, great. How can I have your data? That's the next question they ask. They don't even ask for my business card. So how do you enable research across the research community? And one of the things you've learned is that you just can't throw data over the wall and expect great research will be done. It's a constant engagement, and anybody who's done data research will realize that 80% of the time is spent actually cleaning the data, and 20% of the time is actually building the algorithms and doing research. So how do you take it across the companies and do it in a scalable way? I'm going to stop right there. Are there any questions or later on for the panel?